Ha, ha.
Shields and swords, feel the wars, fighting my blood down to the core. Warriors from medieval age, fear the reign of night brigades. Crusades into the room, moving through the temples and tombs. Scared and place, prepare to face. Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. 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 Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
I mean, look at this. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Hey, minions. So, for Halloween, I asked one of my minions of doom over there to make me an invisibility potion. And, people think it's all great having minions. And to be fair, it's good. But sometimes they try to impress you by, giving you a potion that they haven't quite tested out as much as they should. And so sometimes you're not quite invisible, but you kind of just look like the nerdier version of the Predator. But here I am, nonetheless. And I'm here today because of Halloween, and that's why I wanted to be invisible for you, despite the not so great work of one of my minions. So today I'm going to read you a little bit from Grettir Saga, which is a saga that it's a lot of wonderful adventures and lots of supernatural and spooky happenings. But particularly, I want to tell you about Grettir and his fight with a ghost called Glom. Glom he was a shepherd. He'd been killed, and then his spirit was causing all sorts of trouble and raiding and whatnot. And finally, Grettir had had enough. And so I'm going to read for you this piece from Grettir Saga, just a little bit here. Grettir rode to Thorhallstad, where he was welcomed by the Bondi. He asked Grettir whither he was bound, and Grettir said he wished to spend the night there if the Bondi permitted. Thorhall said he would indeed be thankful for him for staying there. Few, he said, think it a gain to stay here for any time. You must have heard tell of trouble that is here, and I do not want you to be inconvenienced on my account. Even if you escape unhurt yourself, I know for certain that you will lose your horse, for no one can keep his beast in safety who comes here. Grettir said there were plenty more horses to be had if anything happened to this one. Thorhall was delighted to be at Grettir's wishing to remain, and received him with both hands. Grettir's horse was placed securely under the lock and key, and they both went to bed. The night passed without Glom showing himself. Your being here has already done some good, said Thorhall. Glom has always been in the habit of riding on the roof or breaking open the doors every night, and you can see from the marks. Then Grettir said, either he will not keep quiet much longer, or he will remain so more than one night. I will stay another night and see what happens. Ooh, night in a haunted house. Then they went to Grettir's horse and found it had not been touched. The Bondi thought that all pointed to the same thing. Grettir stayed a second night, and again the thrall did not appear. The Bondi became hopeful and went to see the horse. There he found the stable broken open, the horse dragged outside, and every bone in his body broken. Thorhall told Grettir what had occurred and advised him to look to himself, for he was a dead man if he waited for Glom. Grettir answered, I must not have less for my horse than a sight of the thrall. The Bondi said there was no pleasure to be had from seeing him. He is not like any man. I count every hour a gain that you are here. The day passed, and when the hour came for going to bed, Grettir said he would not take off his clothes and lay down on the seat opposite to Thorkel's sleeping apartment. He had a shaggy cloak covering him, with one end of it fastened over his feet and the other drawn over his head so that he could see through the neck hole. He set his feet against a strong bench, which was in front of him. The framework of the outer door had been broken away, and some bits of wood had been rigged up roughly in its place. partition, which had once divided the hall from the entrance passage, was all broken, both above the crossbeam and below, and all the bedding had been upset. The place looked rather desolate. There was light burning in the hall by night. When about a third part of the night had passed, Grettir heard a loud noise. Something was going on up to the building, riding above the hall and kicking up on it with its heels until the timbers cracked again. This went on for some time, and then it came down towards the door. The door opened. Grettir saw the thrall stretching an enormously big and ugly head. Glam moved slowly in, and on passing the door stood upright, reaching to the roof. He turned to the hall, resting his arms on the crossbeam and peering along the hall. The Bondi uttered no sound, having heard quite enough of what had gone on outside. Grettir lay quite still and did not move. Glam saw a heap of something in the seat and came further into the hall and seized the cloak tightly with his hand. Grettir pressed his foot against the plank and the cloak held firm. Glam tugged at it again and still more violently, but it did not give way. A third time he pulled, this time with both hands and with such force that he pulled Grettir up out of the seat, and between them the cloak was torn in two. Glam looked at the bit which he held in his hands and wondered much who could pull like that against him. Suddenly, Grettir sprang up under his arms, seized him round the waist, and squeezed his back with all his might, intending in that way to bring him down. But the thrall wrenched his arms until he staggered from the violence. Then Grettir fell back to another bench. The benches flew about, and everything was scattered around them. Glam wanted to get out, but Grettir tried to prevent him by stemming his foot against anything he could find. Nevertheless, Glam succeeded in getting him outside the hall. Then a terrific struggle began. The thrall began trying to drag him out of the house, and Grettir saw that however hard he was to deal with in the house, he would be worse outside, so he strove with all his might to keep him from getting out. Then Glam made a desperate effort and gripped Grettir tightly towards him, forcing him to the porch. Grettir saw that he could not put up any resistance, and with a sudden movement, he dashed into the thrall's arms and set both his feet against a stone which was fastened in the ground at the door. For that, Glam was not prepared, since he had been tugging to drag Grettir towards him. He reeled backwards and stumbled hind foremost out of the door, tearing away the lintel with his shoulders and shattering the roof, the rafters, and the frozen thatch. Head over heels, he fell out of the house, and Grettir fell on top of him. The moon was shining very brightly outside, with light clouds passing over it and hiding it now and again. At that moment, when Glam fell, the moon shone forth, and Glam turned his eyes upwards to it. Grettir himself has related that the sight was the only one which had ever made him tremble. What with fatigue and all else that he had endured, when he saw the horrible rolling of Glam's eyes, his heart sank so utterly that he had not strength to draw his sword, but lay there, well nigh betwixt life and death. Glam possessed more malignant power than most fiends, for now he spoke in this wise. You have expended much energy, Grettir, in your search for me, nor is that to be wondered at, if you should have little joy thereof. And now I tell you that you shall possess only half the strength and firmness of heart that were decreed to you if you had not striven with me. The might which was yours till now, I am not able to take away. But it is in my power to ordain that never shall you go stronger than you are now. Nevertheless, your might is sufficient, as many shall find to their cost. Hitherto you have earned fame through your deeds, but henceforth these shall fall upon you, exile and battle. Your deeds shall turn evil, and your guardian spirit shall forsake you. You will be outlawed, and your lot will be to dwell ever alone. And this I lay upon you, that these eyes of mine shall ever before your vision. You will find it hard to live alone, and at last it shall drag you to your death. When the sprawl had spoken, the faintness which had come over Grettir left him. He drew a short sword, cut off Glam's head, and laid it between his thighs. Then the Bandi came out, having put on his clothes while Glam was speaking, but he did not venture to come out until he was dead. Thorhall praised God and thanked Grettir warmly for having laid this unclean spirit. Then they set it to work and burned Glam to cold cinders, bound the ashes in a skin, and burned them in a place far away from the haunts of men or beast. Then they went home, the day having nearly broken. And that's the part of Grettir's saga where Grettir fights and defeats Glam, but at some cost to himself. Well, speaking of cost, I'm going to have to perhaps get a cost from this minion who gave me this kind of almost working invisibility potion that I have going on here. Hopefully by next time you see me, I should be visible again. If not, until next time, happy Halloween.